up close. Possibly losing a dropship. Fantasy able to save his dropship barely. Wow. Look at that line.
Nice tank line.
Fantasy spending time with his work of art there, tank line. Fantasy is looking pretty strong in the game so far. Even though canata had a nice attack, I think Fantasy has countered with that original attack with a even stronger push and harassment on his end. So Fantasy looking good. canata, I almost said Canada. Canada going for their second expansion there, and we do see Fantasy going for the expansion at the top, 12 o'clock as well. Fantasy moving out with that huge group of tanks he has coming up here. As long as he doesn't move into siege, which I don't think he's going to do, I think he'll be pretty safe off in trying to contain canata here.
Well, this whole time, I mean, think about it. Fantasy is getting his third base up now, and he's stopped the third base of canata going up, and he's taken out.
He has his fourth base.
That second gas. Yeah, he's trying to get up his fourth base now, and he stopped that gas from mining for a long time. So, I mean, he's got a ton of tanks, and the only reason not to go all tanks in TVT is because of Ro8, and he's taking control of the air, and he's kept canata busy so much that he hasn't really been able to get any Ro8s or anything like that. I mean, the other reason is dropships can drop on top of your tanks, and that's why you have a few Goliaths mixed in. But again, he's been so distracted, and he's been so low on gas, he hasn't been able to get all that stuff out. So Fantasy is in really, really good shape right now. Assuming he can actually do something with these tanks.
Yeah.
And it could go either way. He could do something with them in a sense of using them to defend and get a fourth base up with 2 gas.
Wow.
And then just overrun canata with just mass tank Goliath. Which I've seen happen in a TVT on this map before. Once you get those 4 gas, you just pump gas units just like crazy. Or he could go in for an attack. I'm not sure why he instead is kind of waffling around the middle of the map.
Where's his Goliaths? That's my question. I don't know where Fantasy's Goliaths are at all. So he doesn't have any anti-air right now, which I guess technically, I mean, canata could easily go for a drop on one of these bases and just take it out. I mean, obviously Fantasy could certainly get a couple of dropships in the air. I think that's what canata's going to do, which I think is a really smart move on his half. He's going to go for this top left 10 o'clock base here, try to take out the double gas. Now this is perfect. Now obviously Fantasy's scanning it there with the eBay, but oh, Fantasy does have a lot of dropships. He is going to be able to counter attack this base, or counter drop this drop. And I don't feel like canata is going to be able to do enough damage here. Fantasy is going to come in here and clean this up fairly quickly.
Yeah, 5 dropships on
3, I think.
On 3, and it's not looking not looking too good at all. It looks like Fantasy is definitely going to wipe this up, and is going to be in a really, really dominant lead. He's going to keep this 4th base. He's going to keep his 4th gas, and he's going to load up those dropships again for maybe just to patrol around, but maybe he's just going to go try and finish off canata. Or I'm not sure exactly. He might be expecting canata to drop more forces on that. Canata trying to get his 4th base up now as well, but he's a little bit behind with it.
Oh, and here comes another big drop by Fantasy. Nothing there. Fantasy could easily take out this tank with just a few rounds from all of those, and he is going to be able to take that out. canata has nothing even near this, and he cancels it very smartly, just losing a few minerals rather than the entire base. And Fantasy is playing so well right now. He is so mobile. He's all over the map. For those that didn't know, Fantasy 3-0'd the last round in the round of 16. He is intent, man. He wants to win. Fantasy never won a gold. Always been a silver medalist, at least recently. And he certainly wants to take this away. You know, canata definitely a strong player, but right now Fantasy is just kind of showing his strength. I mean, look at the map right now. You have 2/3 of the map is just purple all over the place, and Fantasy possibly going to try to go for another drop here, or he might just try to take this ridge and maybe possibly gain this expansion for himself. So again, I mean, canata is definitely expanding, and he's doing what he can, but he doesn't quite have the army that Fantasy has been pumping out. I believe canata right now is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bases, I believe, but I believe Fantasy is currently matching that as well. So, and pumping out some more dropships. Obviously, both players are. Fantasy is just kind of controlling the map right now. I think he's kind of waiting for canata to try to move out so he can try to squash this force.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that Fantasy isn't being more aggressive, and to be completely honest, I'm not, well, I say I'm surprised in a sense that he should be a little bit more aggressive, but I'm not surprised in the sense that that's how he's lost TVTs in the past, is by not being aggressive. I saw a game against Light, I think, once, where he had the game in the bag, and he just sat around while Light completely rebuilt his base. It was one of those epic 1-hour games, and might end up winning because Fantasy was too much of a pansy to attack. He had a ton of battle cruisers.
I saw that game. I remember that. Yep.
Instead of attacking with them, he just like
moved back and forth,
pussyfooted around the map, and let Light build up another base and another army and get cloak raids, and let Light run around with vultures and kill all of his combat stations, and it was ridiculous. We're kind of seeing him let Kanata back into this game because he refuses to attack at all, even though he's had a superior army for a while now. And Kanata might be catching up, actually. I don't know if we can even say he has a superior army at this point. Kanata's managing to macro back up again. So I don't know. Kanata getting another base up. He's going to get a second double gas base at the 3 o'clock position, and if Fantasy lets him get away with that, it's his own fault for losing.
I just feel like it's so easy for Fantasy to take... Alright, now we're going to see Kanata actually moving into some tanks here. Not the best idea. Obviously, he definitely has Fantasy outnumbered as far as the number of tanks, but losing a few there carelessly to just a couple tanks, Fantasy is going to be able to reinforce this fairly well. I feel like Fantasy just needs to move to a base and take out a base. I mean, this is Outsider. This is the perimeter-based map where you can just kind of walk down through and take out side bases until your opponent, you know, defends, and then you can go to the other side and then take out those side bases, or at least do some harassment here. We're going to see a probe transfer going on, and God, that's one of the things about these maps, about these matches. There's so much going on. Kanata getting in, definitely taking some pre-shots there. Fantasy taking some shots kind of from both sides here, although Kanata does have the larger force right now. Fantasy's losing a dropship, going to lose another dropship here. No, that was way too close, and Fantasy doing a good job setting up here and kind of shelling this little kind of in the middle force, almost out of position by Kanata. He was able to certainly get some of Fantasy's forces, but I feel like Fantasy, I was just about to say that, Fantasy can use the ridge, and I felt like that's probably where Kanata should have dropped, is on the ridge. And I see this a lot with Terran players not using that ridge to their advantage like they should on this map. You throw up a couple Goliaths on that ridge with some tanks, and you are almost eternally defended except for a giant drop, which obviously they have to expend, the opponent has to expend a lot of army to get there. Anyway, so we're seeing all over the map, Fantasy all over the map, but spread out, and Fantasy forming his nice little line here again, and kind of has a flank going on at this point, but Kanata's kind of army there is dwindling slightly. I don't know if he's going to pull out or just leave it in there, but we are going to see an attack now. God, so close.
I think it's within range, but no vision.
No vision, right? Both of them. Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. I think you were right, Moltra.
Yeah, as soon as those dropships came within range, when he saw those, then they just popped. And once again, Fantasy taking a bit of a military advantage here. And he has been expanding as well around the sides of the map. A lot of back and forth play now. There wasn't really before, but now there's been a lot of back and forth play. And there, Kanata has, look at that, they're showing his 2 double gas expansions.
Right.
Getting another starport up now. I was going to say, this is the point in a TVT where often you'd see it switch to battle cruisers where they're maxed and they've got a crap load of gas. They'll just build a bunch of starports and just go for mass BCs. No sign of that yet, though, at this point, and pretty much all the expansions on the map are taken. Fantasy now moving out with a ton of dropships worth of stuff, and he is, wow, that is a lot of tanks now. Oh, are they showing the...
So Fantasy has like 60 more Psi than Kanata has. Granted, Kanata at one point was quite a bit higher as far as economy goes, and I think Kanata still might have a slight advantage in economy, but Fantasy is just out-macroing Kanata, which is interesting because we felt like Fantasy was expanding. I suppose Fantasy actually had a plan for his expanding this time, which was expand and attack, and not expand and sit around and do nothing. And I always love when you have opposing bases. That's what this map is great for. You know, two opponents almost mining the same minerals because they're so close to each other with bases. But Fantasy right now has a lot. Here we go. We're going to see another drop coming in from a drop from Kanata, a drop from Fantasy, and it's like freaking 4th of July here. And it looks like Fantasy. Whoa! GG.
GG. Fantasy. Kanata just lost his entire army. And Fantasy just showed him a couple control groups of tanks, and I think Kanata was like, I'm not going to be able to deal with that. So,
and
GG.
That's it.
That's it.
Fantasy, and I don't think we mentioned this earlier, Fantasy is moving on to the round of 4. Wow. Canata just done, ready to concede. But you know what? Also conceding to a teammate like that is also a lot easier. Like, look, I'm conceding the game early, but obviously Fantasy probably had the better chance anyway, and has the better chance of going on to defeat somebody like Jadong or, you know, the likes of Type B. But hey, you never know, man. We've seen some impressive stuff from these kind of low-level guys. So.
Yeah, this has been the OSL of the low levelers. Although, if that would have stood up to it, then Canada, a little bit less of a name of Fantasy, would have gone on. So, congrats to Fantasy, nicely done, nicely played. He just kind of, I think he basically just kind of took that early advantage, and even though I was admonishing him a bit for not attacking, what he was doing was defending a lot and out-expanding and out-macroing Canada instead. And that's basically what he did, took an early advantage, and just pushed it home 10 bases later
quite quickly
into a 60 supply difference, and that was it. GG.
Well, GG. We're going on to Jadong versus Zero next. I'm not expecting a long match, but I believe in miracles. I believe in miracles. See you guys then.